Hey.
I have to get really close to it. I might have to get really close to it. Hey, say hi to Karen for me, okay?
Is that any better?
She won't talk to you anymore, really. Don't worry about it.
Technical difficulties.
I think I know where they're starting late, Hampshire.
Okay, now can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. So welcome to the 2015 debate sponsored by the Larchmont Mamaroneck League of Women Voters. My name is Alice Pernick and I'm co-president of the League. And our mission is to encourage the informed and active participation of people in our government at all levels. The League of Women Voters is nonpartisan and neither supports nor opposes any of the candidates. Tonight, there will be a question and answer period first for the candidates who are running unopposed. Those would be for our town candidates, followed by debates for 3 contested races. I want to mention that one of the notices that we sent out about tonight's event, it incorrectly stated that some candidates appearing tonight would be on the independence line of the ballot. Our notice was based on the most current information provided by the Board of Elections at that time, so we apologize for that error, and we note that none of tonight's candidates will be on the independence line, in fact. All of the candidates have received a copy of the agenda, rules, and format. The order in which they speak has been determined by lot. The first 2 or 3 questions in each debate will be league questions. After that, audience members can submit their questions, and Stephanie, you want to just give a little wave? Stephanie has some forms if you want to submit a question. We need your name, and we need your address, and you need to be present at the time the question is asked. You can give it back to Stephanie as well. Unfortunately, because of time constraints, though, we can't read every question submitted by audience members. So if we receive multiple questions about the same or similar topics, we will group them together, and the League will select one question from that group that most clearly presents the issue. So we ask you to understand if you don't hear your exact wording on the subject, if it's received more than one question, or if it's not your name that's on the question that is read. And if we have selected your question, like I said, you have to be present when we read it. Election day this year is going to be on Tuesday, November 3rd. The polls are open from 6 a.m. until 9 p.m. If you need more information about voting, you can go to www.vote411.org for the location of polling places, a list of all the races that will appear on your ballot, and other election information. And all you have to do is enter your zip code. I just want to say that last year it was very disturbing to me that more people went shopping on Black Friday than the number of people who went to the polls to vote. And this year I urge all of you to get out and vote on November 3rd and encourage all your friends and family members to do the same. I know it's not a presidential election year, but it's still very important. We're very lucky to live somewhere where we have free and fair elections. So you have that right, and you also have the responsibility to vote for well-informed candidates who will lead us responsibly. And that's why we have these debates. We provide them as a vital public service because we want you to vote with confidence on the issues. Before we begin the debates, I want to invite everybody to join the League for a discussion about saving our historic buildings in Larchmont and Mamaroneck. And that's going to be on Tuesday, December 1st at 7:30 in the Mamaroneck Public Library. We're a small league, a local league, and we accomplish a lot. In addition to the candidates' forums and issues breakfasts, in the past year, our Larchmont Mamaroneck League has sponsored 2 local students to participate in the State League's Inside Albany program. We send them up to Albany to shadow a legislator. We've collaborated with the Summit on Voters' Rights Act events, hosted prominent speakers such as our State Assemblyman Steve Otis, former gubernatorial candidate Zephyr Teachout, and New York State Attorney General Eric Schneiderman. We distributed voter registration forms, provided the local portion of Vote 411 Voters Guide, and we sponsored an essay contest for high school students, a Women's History Month poster contest at the Hummocks Middle School, and on and on. So in order for us to continue providing these services, we need a very active membership. We need your help for jobs small and large. If you only have a little amount of time, that's okay, we have a job for you. And I especially want to mention that although the name of our organization is the League of Women Voters, that just reflects our roots in the women's suffrage movement, and we most definitely welcome members and volunteers of any and all genders. So I invite anyone listening here or at home to be an active member of our local league so we can continue our legacy in the community. You can find us online at lwvlm.org, or you can speak with one of us here tonight. So please join us. So many people have helped make these debates possible tonight. I want to thank the league members who organized the forum. I also want to thank LMC-TV for their live broadcast, and they will be rebroadcasting it as well. Our thanks go to the town of Mamaroneck for the use of the town center. A special thanks to the candidates who are appearing here as part of their very grueling campaign schedules. And I want to thank particularly our League of Women Voters board member Beth Radow, who will be serving as our timekeeper tonight. That's Beth over there. And finally, I want to extend our welcome and our thanks to tonight's moderator, who's Ms. Susie Rush. Ms. Rush is past president of the Scarsdale League of Women Voters, and she also works as a legislative analyst for Assemblywoman Amy Paulin. We are pleased to have her here with us tonight, and I turn the debates over to Ms. Rush now.
Thank you. We are here this evening to hear the views of the candidates about the issues concerning the community, and it is important that we give each candidate the opportunity to make the best use of the time allotted for this program. I'd like to remind you that no campaign material may be distributed in this room. Now on to our very full evening. Let me go over the format and general ground rules quickly. We will begin first with the candidate for Town of Mamaroneck Supervisor who is running unopposed. We will then hear the candidates for Town of Mamaroneck Council who are also running unopposed. Then we will hear the candidates for Westchester County Legislator, District 7. Following that, we will hear the candidates for Village of Mamaroneck Mayor. We will end with hearing from candidates for Village of Mamaroneck Trustee. There will be a brief break between each session to allow for changing of the candidates. In each session in which there is more than one candidate present, the initial order of speaking has been determined by the drawing of lots. Thereafter, the order of response will alternate. Closing statements will be given in the same order as the opening statements. There will be a brief question and answer period for each session. We ask that all questions be submitted in writing and be legible, and as Alice mentioned, forms are available. We ask you to indicate to whom the question should be addressed. No questions of a personal or abusive nature will be permitted, and no statements are allowed. Questions will not be more than 30 seconds in length. As moderator, I reserve the right to rule on the appropriateness of all questions. Questions should be submitted prior to the particular segment, but league representatives will continue to accept questions during the session. The number of questions may be limited due to time constraints. I will ask the submitted questions provided the person who submitted the question is present at the time I ask the question and confirms his presence. There will be no allotted time for rebuttal. However, candidates may include rebuttal remarks in their closing statements. Before each session, I'll go over the rules again. And I ask that you hold your applause until all candidates have made their closing statements at the end of each session. Cell phones should be turned off as a matter of courtesy, and unauthorized videos are not permitted. The league owns the forum, and only those permitted by the league may tape, and even those must air the forum in its entirety because the FCC requires that a debate must not be edited and must be broadcast in its entirety, either live or reasonably soon after it takes place. If a person is observed to be taping, I will pause the forum and ask the person to stop. I will not resume until the person stops taping. I will terminate the forum if the person will not stop or leave. So with that, we'll begin with the Town of Mamaroneck Supervisor. I'd like to introduce the candidate, Nancy Seligson, incumbent. Ms. Seligson will have up to 1 minute for an opening statement. We will then have a 5-minute Q&A period. The first 2 questions will be from the league. Thereafter, I will ask questions submitted from the audience, as I said, provided the submitter is present. Ms. Seligson will have 1.5 minutes to respond. Finally, Ms. Seligson will have up to 1 minute to make a closing statement. And our timekeeper, as we met her before, Beth, will hold up a sign to indicate 30 seconds remain and a red sign when time is up. Ms. Seligson, will you please begin, and will you also identify your party affiliation, if any?
Yes, good evening. My name is Nancy Seligson, and I am running on the Democratic ticket, and I am running for a third 2-year term as supervisor. I've had the privilege of serving as town supervisor for the past 4 years and as a councilwoman for 12 years previous to that. I'm pleased to say that the town runs a good government. By that I mean we provide a high level of service while keeping costs in check. We listen and respond to residents usually within a day, whether it's a compliment or a complaint. Our structure is organized to allow us to directly address resident concerns from streetlights to traffic. In my 4 years as supervisor, I've focused on saving the town money and positioning the town for the future. I created a town environment committee called the Sustainability Collaborative that's helped the town implement programs and apply for grants to make us more resilient to extreme weather events and sustain our resources. As of August 2015, our energy costs decreased 36% compared to the previous year. We're on track to save over $150,000 on energy costs for 2015.
Thank you. We will now begin our question and answer period. The first question, which has been submitted by the league, is: the town has taken sewer payments out of the tax bill of residents in the unincorporated part of the town and is now charging these residents for this service as a separate user fee. To the extent the town adopts user fees for this and other services, how will that affect a homeowner's tax bill overall, and how will it affect the town's budget and services? And you have a 1.5 minutes to respond.
We made the decision to remove the sewer taxes that are in your tax bill and make it a user fee because we think it will be more effective in having people pay for what they use. It's based on your water usage. It will lower your tax bill to the town, and it will increase a fee, but the fee has actually been determined to, we think, be lower than your tax would have been because the tax is based on the value of your house, not on how much water you use. So this seems to be a more equitable way to charge for it. And we think that it will improve the town budget. We are under a tax cap and trying to figure out ways to lower the tax levy in the town all the time. And this seemed like a very good service that's provided that could be allocated on a use basis.
Thank you. The second question from the league is: what do you think is the biggest challenge facing the town? What approach do you recommend?
I think the long-term biggest challenge facing the town is going to be climate change, because I think that sea level rise is going to be a very serious serious problem for the town of Mamaroneck and our entire region. So that's one of the reasons that I'm so interested in seeing us reduce our energy costs, becoming more sustainable, more resilient on our own in the town of Mamaroneck. That is for the long term. For the short term, it is going to be maintaining our taxes or hopefully lowering them, but maintaining the level of services that we provide to the community. We have a very high level of service. We hear often from our residents that they appreciate that high level of service, but it's expensive to provide it. And costs go up. Whether the inflation rate goes up or not, the costs do go up because we're talking about people who provide these services. So it's salaries, it's salary benefits, employee benefits, healthcare costs, pensions, all of which go up. So that's a large challenge. One more challenge I'd like to mention, and that's a continuing, ongoing challenge, one that's going to hit us in the next year or two, is that we are going to be forced to improve, repair, renovate our sewer lines, our sanitary sewer lines that are owned by the town. And we're going to be forced to ask residents to look at the sewer lines they own that connect to their homes. These are underground, old pipes. We think there's going to be lots and lots of money that's going to have to be spent to fix these pipes, and we're going to have to figure out how to do that too.
What steps, Finney, will you take to avoid increasing user fees for public facilities and activities, particularly recreational ones?
Nothing, because recreational fees are appropriate to be user fees. Recreational fees are not, recreational programs are not used by the entire community. In the town of Mamaroneck, we provide lots and lots of different recreation programs, and we think that it is most appropriate for those people who utilize those programs to actually pay the fees for them. And that's how we have been funding recreation programs for a very long time in the town of Mamaroneck, and it seems to work very well. We have opportunities for people, if they cannot afford those fees, to approach the town and see if we can help them in some way to afford them or to lower those costs. But we think and have experienced that, in fact, user fees are the appropriate funding mechanism for recreational programs. That doesn't necessarily mean just going outside and riding your bike. We're not going to charge anyone for that, and we're certainly not going to charge anyone for breathing the air and walking along the hummocks conservation area. But for specific programs, we think that user fees are appropriate.
Thank you. The question and answer period is closed. We will now have the closing statement. Ms. Seligson, you have 1 minute.
Oh, hold on, Beth. Sorry. Okay. Thank you to the League of Women Voters for this opportunity to address the community tonight. I've lived in Larchmont or Mamaroneck for the past 27 years. I have a 21-year-old son and 3 stepdaughters, and our community is often cited as one of the best places to live in the country and in the state. We're endowed with great water resources, beautiful seasons, proximity to the greatest city on earth, and charming neighborhoods with attractive, diverse housing stock. I look forward to contributing to the success of our town by balancing the constant of change and protecting our resources. I have a great deal of respect for the people of our community, and I've enjoyed getting to know those who work hard to protect, serve, and volunteer for us. I believe that treating everyone with respect, trying to solve problems, and having clear, transparent policies that are fair to all goes a long way in creating a great community. And finally, I want to say the most political thing, let's go Mets.
Thank you. I'd like to thank Ms. Seligson for attending our forum this evening, and I'd like to call up the candidates for Town of Mamaroneck Council. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. He always does.
What?
Bring your own water.
Did they have free water? Did I miss out on something?
Yes. Ooh, free water.
I'm fine. I'm fine.
Thank you.
You ready?
Me.
Now I'd like to begin our session with the Town of Mamaroneck Council candidates. Let me introduce the candidates. Abby Katz to my right and Thomas A. Murphy to my left. Both are incumbents, and to review the rules again, each candidate has up to 1 minute for an opening statement. The order of speaking was determined by lot. We will then have an 8-minute Q&A period. The first questions will be from the league. Thereafter, I will ask questions submitted from the audience, provided the submitter is present. Each candidate will have 1.5 minutes to respond. There will be no rebuttal. After Q&A, each candidate will have up to 1 minute to make a closing statement. Our timekeeper will hold up a sign to indicate 30 seconds remain and a red sign when time is up. Ms. Katz, please identify your party affiliations, if any, then make your 1-minute opening statement.
I'm Abby Katz. I'm running on the Democratic Party ticket. Thank you to the League of Women Voters for providing this forum, which allows me to reach out to members of our community. It's been an honor to serve the town of Mamaroneck for the past 4 years, and I'm very happy to be selected to run for a second term as councilwoman for the town, along with my colleague Supervisor Seligson and Councilman Tom Murphy. I've lived in the unincorporated section of the town for 18 years, along with my husband David and my 2 daughters who currently attend Mamaroneck High School. As far as my community involvement, I've been the treasurer of the Murray Avenue PTA, I've been the president of the Larchmont Gardens Civic Association, and I'm an active volunteer and board member for the Larchmont Mamaroneck Hunger Task Force. I am proud of the many accomplishments the town board has achieved in the past 4 years. My focus has been and will continue to be local quality of life issues and improving resident communications. Implementing the Washington Square resident parking permit program is one such example. This program has resulted in much more available on-street parking for the residents who live in the area and those who shop in local businesses in the area. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Murphy, your party affiliations, if any, and your 1-minute statement.
I'm Tom Murphy, and I am a Democrat. And I'm only running a Democratic line. I want to thank the League. I want to thank everybody who's watching. I want to thank everybody who's going to turn off in about 12 minutes, but thanks for still being here. I welcome this opportunity to, hash out my differences with Councilwoman Katz. But it's been a privilege this past almost 2 years serving in the town of Mamaroneck. I've been serving in local government since 2001 off and on. And, this is a community where, I'm very cognizant of being privileged to live here. I grew up in a community that didn't have any amenities that we have here, that didn't enjoy the quality of life that we had here. This is a community that's relatively free of crime, and we take that for granted. But when you don't have that, and when you're living with that every day of your life, it is a stressor that you really can't understand until you've lived there. I love this community. I'm glad I had the opportunity to participate in the town of Mamaroneck government.
Thank you. We will now begin our question and answer period, and I need the questions.
I'm good.
The first question from the League, from Mr. Murphy, goes first. What are your priorities for infrastructure both above and below ground?
That's a really good question. One of the problems with, we have a lot of infrastructure that's aging. Nancy pointed out these sewer lines that have to be maintained. The town owns, this building and a lot of other older buildings that have to be maintained. The problem with infrastructure repairs is that you have to keep it under the tax cap. If you're a school system, your infrastructure repairs don't count toward the tax cap. So I think one of the challenges of local government is for those of us in it to explain to people that these are needful things, and these are the repairs that have to happen and maintenance that has to happen. And there might be times when we're going to have to go over the tax cap. And I'd rather not go over the tax cap, but I'm not going to be in a position where we didn't do the work that had to be done, and 15, 20 years from now the sewer system fails, or some major life important system in this community doesn't work out because we didn't do what we had to do. And the tax cap is something that we have to struggle with, but we have to be cognizant that this was something that was imposed on us from Albany, And, you know, it was Albany politicians trying to say they did something about taxes without actually having to do anything. And, you know, the burden falls upon us. And, you know, that's all right. That's our jobs. But, you know, it's an unrealistic number. I think this year it's 1.4 or something like that, which, you know, you can't keep on to that number and still have a functioning community for very long.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Ms. Katz, you have up to 1.5 minutes to respond.
Regarding infrastructure, the above-ground infrastructure that I would focus on is one of my favorite issues, is paving roads and sidewalks. It's one of the issues that we get the most residents' complaints about. As we enter budget season, I'm always most anxious to see we have a whole 5-year plan of which roads are getting paved, and I'm always interested to see what roads are there, and, you know, because I go around the neighborhoods, I in my head have which roads are next. So that's a crucial issue. The other above-ground issue is the amount of tear downs in our neighborhoods, the effect it's having on communities, the amount of trees being removed, and, you know, the effects that has on neighbors and communities. You know, we want to look at the flooding effects this is going to have, as well as the aesthetic effects. Underground, as it's been mentioned, is really the sewer, the stormwater pipes. You know, it's a problem on both private property and public property, and that's going to really take a lot of time and money to get resolved, and that's going to be a big issue on our agenda in the coming years. Thank you.
Thank you. The second lead question is, if you had access to additional capital, which line item in the local budget would you allocate the funds to, and why? Ms. Katz.
Oh, gosh. Well, I think I'd have to go probably right to what we were just talking about, is the stormwater. I mean, that's going to be the biggest expense facing the town. It's not pretty, it's not glamorous, but I think that's where we're going to have to put the money. I think that's the one.
Mr. Murphy.
Yeah, Abby's 100% right. That's where I would put the money too. And it's important for the folks watching to realize that, you know, we were entering into an agreement with Westchester County and IMA to do this work, and we have entered into an agreement with them. But then we got sued by Save the Sound. I just want to point out that, you know, we were doing what we were supposed to do, and, you know, we're still doing what we were supposed to do. So hopefully that lawsuit won't be perfected, because we're doing what they actually want us to do anyway. So we were ahead of the curve in taking care of our infrastructure. And I think this is a board, the 5 members of this board, who are committed to taking care of this community and leaving it in a better shape than we found it. So I would have to go what Abby said. The most needful project right now is to fix our sewer infrastructure.
Thanks. Is Robert Stark in the audience? So this question is from Robert. The mayor of the village of Mamaroneck has taken credit for Mamaroneck being ranked as one of the best places to live in New York and the United States. Does the town government deserve some of the credit for the high esteem in which Mamaroneck is held? I'm going to start with Mr. Murphy.
Well, having served on both the village government and the town government, I really think I'm the main reason for this ranking. But I hate to admit that, you know, but no, listen, we're one community. These are artificial boundaries. You know, Larchmont, Mamaroneck, you know, our children all go to school together. The kids all play in the same baseball teams. We worship at the same houses of worship. This is really one community. And I think that accolade, if, you know, whoever gave us that accolade is deserved, but it's deserved for all 3 communities. You know, this is a great place to live, and, you know, we don't want to balkanize ourselves, you know, and say, you know, we are over here and we're over there. You know, this is one community, and serving on the town board makes that more and more apparent every day. You know, the village of Mamaroneck, I live in the village of Mamaroneck still. I love the village of Mamaroneck. You know, it's a great place to live. You know, I work in the town of Mamaroneck. My kids went to school in the town of Mamaroneck, and that's a great place to live too. And, you know, someday hopefully I'll have enough money to live in Larchmont, and I can tell you that that's a great place to live too. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Katz.
I think it's always nice to share the praise. There's plenty of, you know, of parties that are involved in making this such a great place to live. You have the geography, you have the sound is beautiful. Nobody can really take credit for that except all of us can, for keeping it clean. You have a great school system. We're close to New York City. We have great train stations. So there's plenty of, you know, praise to be shared in making Mamaroneck a great place to live.
Thank you.
Oh, you know, I'm sorry, I meant to add that, yes, the town can take some of this credit because we do have a number of shared services that we share with the villages, and those are things like recreation, the senior center, Section 8. These are all things that are shared services and for all members of the villages and the unincorporated town.
Thank you. The question and answer period is closed. We will now go to closing statements. Ms. Katz, you have up to 1 minute.
Though I'm running unopposed this year, I'm here asking all of you again for your votes. I promise that I will continue to work hard for all of you in this community to improve our quality of life and preserve the character of this town which we have all chosen to live in. I always enjoy seeing citizens of this community at events, memorials, and meetings, and I look forward to hearing from all of you about the issues facing the town board. So please come out, tell us what you want from the town, let your voices be heard. So that's it, and let's go Mets.
Thank you. Mr. Murphy.
Thank you all for coming out tonight. Thank you for those of you who are still watching at home. You know, one of the hardest things about being in local government today is communicating with the residents, because there's so few opportunities. I'm sitting in this room tonight, and I don't see anybody from the media here. You know, when I first started doing this in 2001, there'd be 2 or 3 reporters in the room, and you know, something happens in a community that you serve in, and people say, well, I didn't know about that. Well, because there's no media anymore. So it really is up to the individual citizen to try and get more involved, to try and pay attention. And I know it's hard. I know everybody has a lot of work to do. But, you know, the majority of your life is here. Your taxes are paid here. You know, this is where your children are going to go to school. So I urge all of you to please try and get more involved in the community. Please come out and vote November 3rd. You know, it's the most important right we have, because if we don't have that right, none of the other ones are going to survive. So please come out and vote November 3rd. I hope that you can vote for me and Abby and Nancy and everybody else. You know, make your choice. But thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Katz and Mr. Murphy, for attending this evening. I'd like to call up the candidates for Westchester County Legislator, District 7. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. He is... Okay, we're ready. Let's begin our session with the Westchester County Legislator District 7 candidates. I'd like to introduce the candidates: Susan Watson on my right and Catherine Parker, incumbent, on my left. To review the rules, each candidate has up to 1.5 minutes for an opening statement. The order of speaking was determined by lot. We will then have approximately 25 minutes for Q&A. The first 2 questions will be from the league. Thereafter, I will ask questions submitted from the audience, provided the submitter is present at the time. Each candidate will have 1.5 minutes to respond. There will be no rebuttal. After Q&A, each candidate will have up to 1.5 minutes to make a closing statement. Our timekeeper will hold up a sign to indicate 30 seconds remain and a red sign when time is up. Ms. Watson, please identify your party affiliations, if any. Then you have up to 1.5 minutes for your opening statement.
Thank you. I'm Susan Watson. I'm running on the Conservative and Republican lines. This is my first try for public office, and I'm running for office because I think voters deserve a choice in every election. My opponent represents a progressive agenda, and I'm offering a limited government alternative. Oliver Wendell Holmes once said that taxes are the price we pay for civil society, but I think it's more accurate to say that taxes are the price we pay for government, and we get to choose how much government we want based on how much taxes we're willing to pay. So when I say limited government, I think we should be limited in both the social and economic spheres. So I am pro-choice, pro-immigration, and I believe in marriage equality. On the economic side, I'm in favor of low taxes, limited regulation, and free trade. I spent 35 years in the private sector. I didn't get all the way to CEO, but like Carly Fiorina, I started as a secretary and became a senior vice president in 2 Fortune 500 companies. Along the way, I learned to work with teams, ask questions, understand finance, and create value. So as I look at the county priorities now, I want to ask the questions: what does it cost? Who pays for it? Who benefits? What's the risk? And understand how we can make government better and more responsive, but keeping the price of government down. Finally, I also know that we need to grow the economy and grow revenue so that the tax burden rests a little less heavy on each of us, because the pie is bigger. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Parker, please identify your party affiliations, if any, and you have up to a minute and a half.
Sure. I'm a Democrat, and I'm running on the Democrat Working Families Party's line and the Women's Equality Party line. Good evening. There is a very distinct difference between my opponent and myself, and I think you'll have actually a very easy decision to make for Tuesday. I've spent the last 8 years as an elected official, and I've shown my strength in crafting budgets that understand the importance of budgeting, but with necessary capital improvements and operating costs, the things we depend upon as taxpayers and the things that taxpayers expect. My opponent has no experience. I have a long record of supporting environmental policy, and folks here in Mamaroneck and Larchmont, I think, really appreciate that and value that at every level of government. My opponent does not value it, and she admitted at an earlier League of Women Voters debate in Rye that she doesn't understand all the issues. I have also a proven track record of working across the aisle to accomplish goals inspired by whether it's on the environment, economic development, or trying to stretch every last penny to keep your taxes low. My opponent has no such track record. I've gotten to know this wonderful community and its nonprofits and organizations that make it great, such as the League of Women Voters, the Community Resource Center, At Home on the Sound, the Larchmont Mamaroneck Summit, and even the Facebook group Love Larchmont. And more importantly, I've gotten to know the people that make up these organizations. And you've gotten to know me too. You know that I bring a great deal of experience with me, not just as an elected official, but as a businesswoman and leader of many community organizations over the years.
Thank you. So the first question is from the League. There is a loss of $25 million in the county budget due to lower revenue from gas taxes as a result of falling gas prices at the pump. How do you propose to make up for that shortfall? Ms. Parker.
Sure. And that actually goes with another $50 million that we are actually in a deficit budget. This budget that was passed last December for 2015 was a terrible, terrible budget. I did not vote for it. It overestimated sales tax revenues. It relied on borrowing for operating costs such as pensions and tax certiorari's. It was really a budget that as I had learned from my 6 years as a Rye City Councilwoman, it's just not sustainable. And I actually, as I said, was against the budget, but I did look for opportunities to make up some revenue and really try to help balance the budget. I had at the time pointed to the management agreement for Playland. We hadn't entered into a management agreement. The two top proposals included payments to the county of between $4 and $6 million, and I thought that that was a sensible area that we could put into the budget, knowing that something was going to be happening shortly. I think that, you know, part of the reason why I brought forth the legislation for energy director was also to look at our energy costs as a way that we could reduce expenses. The county spends about $30 million on energy costs for its municipal buildings, and if we could reduce that even more, I really felt that there was a way that we could save the taxpayers money. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Watson.
Yes. When we look at a budget, we have to look at not just revenues and but also at costs and how we can cut costs and reduce expenses in various places. There is a shortage on the gas tax this year because I don't think anybody in any industry expected the price of oil to decline as much and as quickly as it has. So that has hurt. The other thing that's hurt is internet shopping because it takes away some of the local property or some of the local sales taxes we collect. But when we start to look at where are our big expenses, the county government spends about $100 million a year on county employee health care. And most of the employees don't pay anything toward that health care. I think most people in the private sector have a different experience, and if we were to ask the employees, this is a contract negotiation point, to pay a portion of their health care, we could not only save the portion that they pay, but I think changing the incentives might make them use it more judiciously so we could actually save more than they're spending.
Thank you. Is Marlene Colbert in the audience? This is from Marlene. In the news, and this is directed to Ms. Parker, but you will have the opportunity to answer as well. In the news, okay, in the News 12 debate, you and your opponent had strong differences of opinion about the county borrowing to cover current operating expenses. Please explain why you are correct and your opponent is wrong.
Well, I will tell you I am correct, but yes, we, you know, I can't explain where Ms. Watson got her information, so I can just tell you that the county has been borrowing for pension costs, not just in 2014 for the 2015 budget, but they did that the year before and the year before that. And it is, by the way, it is within the law that the county can do that. And we know from other areas within the region that who have taken that as part of their practice, that it's not a healthy practice for a government. Look at the problems that Long Island has gotten into having heavily borrowed. We know even that going back to the 1970s that New York City had been in crisis from borrowing for operating costs. So again, I stand by what I said on News 12. It's really, I think, a poor practice for any government to put basically their costs like pensions on, you know, almost like on a credit card, and then expect that we are going to pay for that down the road and accumulate interest that we have to pay for as well. It's really not smart policy, and it's not transparent. It really has a tax increase right there, and you're just going to pay for it later.
Thank you. Would you like to respond?
Yes, in fact, it is illegal under state law for the county to borrow operating expenses. It just doesn't happen. And the way you choose the definition of pension costs and how they're paid, that may be a wrinkle in definition. But one of the things I think we have to keep in mind is that we've been through a very difficult 7 years in this economy generally, where it's been an extraordinarily difficult time. There's been very little growth in our economy, and certainly very little growth in the county. Angus Deaton, who won the Nobel Prize for Economics last month, said, slow growth poisons everything. So we need to create an environment where we welcome business to Westchester County so they create jobs and invest and we grow. Because otherwise the costs are going to consume us over time. We really need to grow the revenue. But I don't want to put a bigger burden on each individual. I want more people to be here and more businesses to be paying tax.
Thank you. This is a league question. What additional steps do you recommend the county take to help municipalities prepare for and respond to weather-related and environmental disasters? Ms. Watson.
Wow, this is a big issue. With respect to that the county really does have to work with the municipalities. The environmental issues I think that are most present to each of us in this community are clearly flooding and to a great extent the deer. And these are issues where the county has to work with the municipalities to come to some conclusions and to work together to find the right solutions. The deer issue has been a huge one here because the optics are just so terrible. Killing deer never looks pretty, but you know they carry ticks, they cause car accidents, and in general they're just devastating our landscapes. With respect to flood, we need to be able to store more water upstream, and that's a county initiative that I think all of the municipalities are going to appreciate.
Thank you. Ms. Parker?
Sure. My opponent didn't spend much time talking about flooding, did she? So let me start by saying when I arrived in the county board on January 2014, that there were 6 drafts for the 6 the watersheds of Westchester County, and we had 6 stormwater reconnaissance plans. Each municipality, with the exception of the city of Rye, had participated in drafting a list of potential flood issues for each community, and then those went into the stormwater reconnaissance plans. We passed those each after vetting them. We invited all of the elected officials and chief administrators for each municipality involved to come in when we were going through their watershed. So you're in coastal Long Island Sound. We worked with the leaders of this community and included the issues that are really pertinent to you right here. Those will allow the county and each municipality to work together. Well, we're going to help pay for those mitigation projects. We have a pot of money that was set aside last year of $15 million. We're going to add more money to it for next year so that it's $25 million. And municipalities can apply for different mitigation projects, and there'll be a sharing, cost sharing.
Thank you. What should be the county's approach to affordable housing and the restoration of block grant funding? Ms. Parker.
Sure. Well, I think that it's unfortunate that a court settlement that was settled in 2009, that you know, the county executive has just been fighting this tooth and nail every step of the way. And at the end of the day, we're talking about 750 units of affordable housing in Westchester County, a county of 1 million people. It's really nothing. And actually, I think in our communities, you know, we understand that there are people that, you know, certainly senior citizens and veterans, and how about our kids that graduate from college and then come back and they have to either make a choice between living in the basement or maybe ending up in Brooklyn. You know, maybe they'd like to come and live in Westchester. And I think that, you know, our municipalities understand that really we're inclusive and we want to do more. So I applaud what has been happening in the town of Mamaroneck and the village of Mamaroneck and even Larchmont, that we are really making some great strides. And I do see that we can abide by the settlement. And unfortunately, the rhetoric has been raised so much that that is actually, I think, part of why HUD has said that the county executive has not been abiding by the 4 corners of the settlement. You know, he's not been encouraging the municipalities, and so, yeah, they are withholding money.
Thank you. Ms. Watson.
Yes, the HUD settlement from 2009 is written and accepted, and the county is in compliance in building the required housing. But I think we also have to look at whether we want our local communities to determine zoning or whether we want that dictated by the federal government. Yes, this community needs affordable housing, but HUD's rationale was that we need to put it in white communities because we are discriminating in Westchester County, when in fact we're the 4th most diverse county in the state. And affordable housing is not really an issue of diversity, it's an issue of economics. Young people can't afford it, seniors can't afford it. So to look at us and say that we're discriminating because we don't have enough affordable housing is just wrong. And I also think you need to be very careful when you accept money from HUD and help from the government, because you can't put limits on how much they're willing to help you and how much they're willing to dictate going forward. He who pays the piper calls the tune is the old adage, and to the extent that HUD gets to tell us where we can build our housing and what kind of housing we'll build, it's not going to be good for this community.
Thank you. The gun show at the county center was banned after the Newtown massacre, but it is anticipated to take place again in February. Should gun shows continue to be banned from the county center? Ms. Watson.
This is a very controversial issue. I don't own a gun. I never have a plan to own a gun, but a gun is a legal product, and The Second Amendment gives us the right to own a gun, and that was recently upheld in 2008 in the court case DC versus Heller. But if you have a right to own a gun, you have a right to buy a gun, you have a right to sell a gun. So to say that we'll take them away from the county center because that's a bad thing, I think if you wanted a gun for nefarious purposes, the last place you would go is to the county center, which is heavily policed. So I think it's a gesture that may not be all that meaningful. I understand that it sounds like a social good, but in fact we have to look at protecting all of our rights. And if we start chipping away at this because we don't like the optics, we're going to end up with a lot fewer rights.
Ms. Parker?
I actually added my name to legislation that called for ending the gun shows at the Westchester County Center, because I don't want to see your tax dollars getting spent on having to pay for a huge force of police that have to not just protect people in the Westchester County Center, but they actually have to patrol all around the perimeter of the parking lots. Because why? Data shows that what happens outside the county center is where people that want to have guns for nefarious purposes, they come to buy guns on the black market. So we would have to actually spend more dollars, more of your tax dollars to protect our citizens. I just don't see that that's a good use of money. I don't see it as good policy. And I really think that really we don't need gun shows at the Westchester County Center, period.
Thank you. What do you recommend to attract new business and retain existing businesses in Westchester? Ms. Parker.
Sure. Well, actually, I'm going to go back to affordable housing. You know, here's an interesting thing. I mentioned, you know, college kids. You know, we like the word now millennials, but I still think of them as our kids. And we know that if you build, you know, if you're building affordable housing and it's near the train station, wow, how convenient is that? And they spend money. They don't have to worry about, you know, things like diapers and kids, and they're not thinking about, you know, squirreling money away. So they'll spend. And New Rochelle, just a little bit farther down the Boston Post Road, is really looking at this model and realizing that, hey, this is the way that you grow the economy. I think it makes a lot of sense. And I think other municipalities who recognize this will absolutely see huge economic growth. I also think we need to repair our infrastructure. You know, we cannot let Westchester start looking like a third world country and not take care of our roads and our bridges, because, you know, no Fortune 500 company wants to have their clients coming in to meet with them and having to get flat tires over terrible roads. And unfortunately, we are seeing that our roads and our bridges are not getting the investment that needs to be made. Again, you know, I'd also say you can put the environment in there too. The more that we can do that, I think, makes us look like we are prepared for the 21st century, I think is good for business. People recognize the fact that we are a leader and for the economy. So I think that that is actually something that has is a good part of a business model as well.
Thank you. Ms. Watson.
I think the best thing we can do to attract business to Westchester is to keep our tax burden low and to keep the regulatory burden light. To the extent that a business has to worry about what new rule is going to be passed or what new regulation they're going to have to comply with, that's less time and energy they have to invest in their future and new assets and new jobs. Money that you spend on compliance can't be invested in new projects and new plant and equipment. Bearing the tax burden of New York State is tough enough. I don't think we need to make it worse in Westchester. So I also think we need to keep in mind that a businessman has to take a long-term view of what he's doing and what his investment profile is. And so he can't wake up every morning worried about what the next new rule is going to be, or what the next thing that will be banned, or the next rule that he'll have to comply with.
Thank you. Is Fran Snedeker in the audience? This is from Fran, and it's directed to both candidates. I am very concerned about preservation of our environment in Westchester County. In your campaign literature, you both call yourselves environmentalists. I have seen Ms. Watson's ads in the local paper criticizing Catherine for introducing environmental legislation to Thank you. I'll start again. I am very concerned about preservation of our environment in Westchester County. In your campaign literature, you both call yourselves environmentalists. I have seen Ms. Watson's advertisements in the local paper criticizing Catherine Parker for introducing environmental legislation to promote electric vehicles and ban plastic bags. What is legislation that you would support on the environment? And I would like to hear from Catherine Parker, do you think you have struck the proper balance between overregulation and protection of our environment? So we're going to start first with Ms. Watson.
I think protecting the planet is a noble goal, and we all want a clean environment. I think we need to be careful about how we go about it. The comment I made about electric vehicle charging stations was really about the government trying to encourage us to buy expensive cars, which is always going to be a second car because of the limits on electric cars. I didn't think the county should have to pay for electric vehicle charging stations, because if you're rich enough to own a Tesla, you can afford to have a charging station of your own. And the comment with respect to plastic bags is less about environment but more about regulation, in that when you ban a plastic bag, it's a rule that the store has to buy different ones or more expensive ones. They're going to pass that cost on to us. Ultimately, people are going to take home their goods in a bag of some sort. Whether they bring it or whether they buy it, you know, is to be determined. But I think changing the rules all the time is a detriment. The other thing, too, is if we really wanted to get rid of bags, we could just ban them completely. But that wasn't the point of the legislation, to ban plastic bags. It was to change them to a different plastic bag or change them to paper, which either have a higher cost or a higher energy use. So it's kind of circular in its logic and doesn't really accomplish the goal that's stated.
Thank you. Ms. Parker.
I really have to recommend that you read the legislation, because you're wrong. And I do think that I've struck the right balance. First of all, Teslas are not the only electric cars on the market. About every manufacturer out there now has an electric vehicle. You can buy a Chevy Volt, and it's actually really pretty economical these days. It can be and should be a consideration for your first car. And more people are buying electric vehicles. The other point of the legislation is that it really is calling for our county-owned lots and any lots that we're giving money to create, that what they're doing is they're wiring for the future. So it's calling for a level 1 wiring, which is really nothing more than an extension cord. You know, that's not very expensive, is it? And then the higher, faster charging stations, you know, we're saying be ready for those. It's really kind of trying to get Westchester, again, to think forward and think about being prepared for the 21st century. And by the way, it's here. We're here in the 21st century. Now, for the plastic bag legislation, the goal is not for people to use another kind of plastic bag or paper bag. The goal is for people to bring their own bag. And I don't know if you've ever shopped in Costco, but Costco doesn't give any bags. So it's really about changing habits, and it's just like when the seatbelt law was first created. You know, it's all about creating legislation that'll produce a change in habit for the good of society.
Thank you. What is your recommendation for the future of Playland and the Children's Museum, and why? Please include your opinion regarding the boardwalk, which has not been rebuilt since being destroyed by Hurricane Sandy 3 years ago. Ms. Parker.
Sure. Well, first of all, that's a great question, and for many different reasons. There are lots of pieces of that question. I will say that I've been very frustrated. Let's start with the boardwalk itself. That the entire boardwalk has not been rebuilt since 2012, when Superstorm Sandy destroyed the back portion of the boardwalk. I've been on the news about that. I've done everything in my power to get the administration, the executive branch, which is responsible for actually doing the work that has been appropriated, to get them to move on that. And it's in design right now. I'm happy that that's moved forward. And one of the reasons why it's been moved forward is because I also put that boardwalk into the list of priority capital projects as part of the management plan for Playland. Children's Museum. I love the Westchester Children's Museum. It's great. It will be even greater when they are finished raising all their money and they will be fully in their space. Right now they're in about 4,000 square feet, and it's a wonderful addition to the boardwalk. And I think that there's more to come with the new management agreement and Standard Amusements. I know that they have plans for little shops and cafes in the south portion of the bathhouse, and I really think that Playland will be glorious when Standard Amusements comes in and makes these changes. And I'm very proud of the work that I did as county legislator to see the agreement pass 17-0 to make sure and ensure that Playland will be here for many, many years to come and will be better than ever.
Thank you. Ms. Watson?
On this point, I agree with my opponent. I think the way that the county board has worked to save Playland is an excellent choice, and I think it's a good standard for future public-private partnerships. To bring in a private sector company to manage a big asset like that is great. I think it's not necessarily within the wheelhouse of county employees to run a big amusement park and to run an amusement park and make it bigger and better in the future. So I think it's a great agreement. I think we can also look at perhaps other parks. Golf courses might be an interesting opportunity to find a public-private arrangement because they're not used by everybody in the county. One of the earlier speakers talked about user fees. I think to the extent that we can find other assets that can profit from a public-private partnership, it would be terrific for the county, and it would either bring in more money or save funds, and either is good to me. I think, thank you. With respect to the Children's Museum, it's great that it's moving forward. Again, I applaud the county board for its progress on these topics.
Thank you. What, in your view, are the county's most pressing infrastructure needs, and how do you propose to address them? Ms. Watson.
Well, I think similar to the conversation we heard earlier, that the sewer issue in the county is equally as dire as it is in the municipalities, because the county connects all of the sewers that the municipalities need, and we do have an issue of effluent going into the Sound. The city of Rye is looking at this now. We know it's going to be expensive in Rye. It's not going to be cheaper anywhere else, but we're having to look at ways to address the leakage from stormwater, the added fluid from sump pumps and so forth, and to get the homeowners to perhaps ultimately bear some of the cost for this. These are very difficult issues, and they're going to be very expensive issues, but I think that's one of the most pressing issues we have.
Thank you. Ms. Parker?
I do agree that the I&I issue is extremely big, and it's not just a Sound Shore issue, by the way. It's all over Westchester County. I mean, wait till we start and get into the issue with the Hudson River communities, and you know, this has been written. You know, Mount Vernon has an issue with I&I. It's really a countywide issue, but the lateral lines, which is really where the I&I the lawsuit comes into play for the Sound Shore, that's really something that, again, it's the municipalities, which we're going to really work very hard to help the municipalities as they go down the process of trying to remedy that situation. But our infrastructure all over Westchester, I hate to tell you, it's really in terrible, terrible shape. Honestly, it really is very discouraging when I see the many projects that have been bonded and appropriated at the county that have just languished. There's not work that's happening. And, you know, talk about economic development, you know, this could be a real job creator if we actually did something to really improve our infrastructure. And again, I want to see Westchester as a leader, and I want to see Westchester as something that is attractive to business. And I really think if we don't get serious about taking care of our infrastructure, we will continue to lose business.
Thank you. The last question is, what is your experience working collaboratively with people of differing points of view? Ms. Parker.
My mom was a school teacher, and she taught me at a very early age that there's politics in everything. And I have to say, when I was head of the Chamber of Commerce or on the board at the Rye Arts Center or president of the League of Women Voters. I mean, when you're dealing with a group of people and everybody having very strong opinions, you know, you just have to kind of work together to find commonalities and find a way. I see that, you know, working in government, you know, I'm a pragmatist. I want to get things done. That's just very much who I am as a person. And so the best way to get things done, find areas of agreement and work towards a goal that you can all, again, agree that that's the real mission. So I've been very successful at making that happen. The two pieces of legislation that I mentioned that I was very involved with, you know, one, the legislation for an energy director, that was a 17-0 vote. The management agreement for Playland that I was very instrumental in getting a few other memorandums of understanding incorporated with that agreement. That was a 17-0 vote. I mean, let me tell you, 17 people that have really strong personalities and a lot of interest in this. So I think I have a pretty strong, proven track record on many, many levels, and I look forward, you know, to continuing working that way.
Thank you. Ms. Watson.
Well, with 35 years in the private sector, I can tell you I've met a lot of people I don't agree with. But that doesn't mean we didn't work together and we didn't have to produce results, because we answer to shareholders who demand results usually every quarter. So it really is about understanding what's at stake, where you want to get to, where you're starting from, and all the steps you have to touch to get there, and who you have to bring along with you. So I won't tell you that I have a lot of experience in government. You obviously know that now, but experience in the private sector is incredibly valuable, because you meet a lot of different people with a lot of different goals and a lot of different priorities, and I've learned to work with all of them.
Thank you. The question and answer period is closed. We will now go to closing statements. Ms. Watson, you have up to 1.5 minutes.
Thank you. And thank you all for coming out tonight. I know it's terrible weather and you're missing the first inning of the Mets game, so, but we'll get you out of here as soon as we can. As you know, I'm a first-time candidate, and I like to think that I'm in the tradition of the founders of this country, who brought their experience from the private sector to government, and then they served, and then they went home. I don't want to be a career politician. I want to serve for a few or several years and then go back to my life. I want to bring my finance and leadership skills to the county, which I think is dominated by career politicians. One of the things that career politicians often forget is that government has no money of its own, that all the money they spend is our tax dollars. I want to build a better relationship between the county and the municipalities in District 7, and make sure that the government and the county works for us and not the other way around. I also want to resist further efforts by HUD to encroach on our local zoning laws. I think zoning should be a local issue. I think we are protected by the 10th Amendment here, and we should fight further approaches for HUD to expand that settlement. I also think that nuisance regulation that discourages business is not a good thing, and to create an environment where business will grow is in all of our interests, because it will create a larger pool of tax dollars, and so each of us can pay a little less. Finally, I know we can't cut our way to prosperity. We do need to grow. We need to make this a welcoming place for business, for families, and look to a bright future for all of us. So I want to be your county legislator. Please vote for me on November 3rd.
Thank you. Ms. Barker.
Career politician. Wow, I heard that. I hear some of you even got that at your homes. You know, my first 6 years as a politician, I was paid nothing. I did it because I really felt it was something that I could give back to my community. And I continue to serve you because I really believe that this is, you see who I am, I see who you are. We understand that we have work to do on issues of the environment, of trying to wisely spend tax dollars, and you know, when I feel that I have nothing to give and when you agree with me, then I guess I will no longer be a politician. I really have to say, by the way, that she's asking you to do something that she hasn't been doing herself, which is she wants you to vote for her, yet the last 5 out of 7 local elections, she has not voted. So I really have to say, I think that that is a bit galling. and to try to then, tarnish someone's record of community activism and, try to throw a line like career politician to somehow paint me in some sort of box. I really think that that's a terrible way to try to win, right? I am going to ask for your support on November 3rd. I'm also going to ask that you tell your friends to watch this debate tonight. Because again, as I said right at the beginning of the opening statement, there's a very, very clear choice here. I think it's an easy decision for this community who to vote for. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Parker and Ms. Watson, for attending this evening. I'd like to call up the candidates for Village of Mamaroneck Mayor. Thank you. Yes.
I'm sorry.
Of course.
So who's going to open first? Okay, that's fine. Whatever it is. Hi, how are you?
Susie Rush. Nice to meet you. So I don't know whether you saw the other races or the other segments, but I'm going to introduce you and then I'm going to ask you to let me know. And you're familiar with the ground rules?
Yes.
Okay. I was just saying that when I introduce him, And you're familiar with the ground rules, right?
Yes, I am.
We're just waiting for the timekeeper.
Fine.
Ready? Okay, we're going to begin our session with the Village of Mamaroneck Mayor candidates. I'd like to introduce the candidates, Daniel S. Natchez to my left, and Norman S. Rosenblum, incumbent, to my right. To go over the rules, each candidate has up to 1.5 minutes for an opening statement. The order of speaking was determined by lot. We will then have approximately 25 minutes for Q&A. The first few questions will be from the league. Thereafter, I will ask questions submitted from the audience, provided the submitter is present at the time. Each candidate will have 1.5 minutes to respond. There will be no rebuttal. After Q&A, each candidate will have up to 1.5 minutes to make a closing statement. Our timekeeper will hold up a sign to indicate 30 seconds remain and a red sign when time is up. Mr. Natchez, please identify your party affiliations, if any, and then you have up to 1.5 minutes to make your opening statement.
I'm running on the Democratic Party and the Mamaroneck First Party.
and please start.
I'm a lifelong resident of this community. I was on the Board of Trustees and served 6 years as Deputy Mayor. I was a principal author along with Sam Yasgur of our special regulations that have preserved our maritime industry, our boatyards, our marinas, our clubs for over 30 years and have prevented the massive building along our harbors. We now need to plan for the next 30 to 50 years. I have worked on Wall Street and I have run an internationally recognized and award-winning environmental waterfront design consulting company, and I know a great deal about land use. There is no question that we're going to have development. The only question is, what type of development do we want? Will it maintain our schools and the character and look and feel of our neighborhoods and village? Or will we have block after block of multi-story rectangular buildings lining our main streets like a small city? Right now, our zoning permits hundreds and hundreds of new condos and fails to draw large commercial developments. Our debt has spiraled by $6 million in the past 6 years to $45 million. We've had over $3 million in cost overruns in the last 3.5 years, and we all pay the price for long-range strategic, or the lack of long-range strategic planning. We have lost our movie theater, and we are losing the last major supermarket in this village, and our zoning does not really encourage a new one. With Thomas Byrd as trustee and myself as mayor, we will plan long-term and put the village back on track. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Rosenblum.
Yes, thank you. First, thank you very much, LMC-TV and the League, for running this. And as noted before, while there are very few people here, it is important for LMC-TV to continue, and I hope that comes up in this debate. I am a registered, non-affiliated voter. I've been endorsed and on the ballot by the Republican, Conservative, Reform, and Friendly Village Party. I am a third-generation resident of the village of Mamaroneck. My grandfather came here approximately 1900, was one of the original builders of apartment houses and homes in the village of Mamaroneck. As a matter of fact, the home I live in, I purchased and remains in the family since approximately 1927. I find that very indicative of the village of Mamaroneck, which is an extremely diverse community where you can have someone that just moved here last week and people that are here third, fourth, and sometimes fifth generations, and everybody gets along in the village of Mamaroneck. I believe the past 6 years in office and actually served as a trustee from 1980 to 82, along with Lou Santoro, will demonstrate in the questions tonight there is a clear choice between Dan Natchez and Norman Rosenblum. I believe the best would be vote for Norman Rosenblum and Lou Santoro to continue the success of the village of Mamaroneck continuously being named #1 in New York State.
Thank you. Please comment on the amount of debt carried by the village. Do you believe this is an appropriate level of debt, taking into consideration the size of our annual budget? Why or why not? Mr. Rosenblum.
I think the debt in reference to the fiscal health of the village of Mamaroneck is proper. I think that I believe and know that the village of Mamaroneck is extremely healthy financially. Our current budget is approximately $33 million. We have long-term debt of about, I think it's $33 million long-term and about $8 short-term. The unencumbered and undesignated fund that we have is approximately $8.5 million. There is another part of that fund that is designated, which would be about $1.5 million or $10 million total. And the reason I bring these numbers up is because it translates into what your rating is by Moody's and everyone else. The suggested ratio would be 20%. And in the village of Mamaroneck, it's between 23 and 25%. We're extremely healthy. We have a debt of about between $40 million, which changes slightly with the payoffs. Your limit is $150 million. We are very healthy and very secure, particularly since we live in the highest tax area in the United States. We will continue to be able to give a great quality of life.
Thank you. Mr. Natchez.
The real issue is why we have the debt, and a lot of the debt is because of cost overruns on a lot of village projects. We have a tremendous amount of people who are on fixed incomes. We have a tremendous amount of people who are struggling to stay here because of the high taxes. When we simply say, okay, we're just going to bond it, we still have to pay that debt back. So the question really isn't what the level of the debt is, because we are fiscally healthy, but the real question is, why are we incurring it? And when we have long-range projects that increase the quality of life, that's great, but we need to bring them in on budget and on time, and that's what we do not do. So really the real question is, how do we make it easier for those who are on fixed incomes? And the reason the way you do that is to have a better control and live by your budgets, because we all live on a budget. You wouldn't run a business with cost overruns like this. You wouldn't run your home this way. Why would we run a village this way? It's time for a change.
Thank you. Second question from the League is, what is your view of the scale of development being proposed in the village? Mr. Natchez.
I think it's very clear from my opening statement. What we need is development that is conducive to our village, that keeps the quality and views of our neighborhoods and the maritime feel of our village. We do not need to be a small city. We need to remain a village. What we suffer from is the law of unintended consequences. Our zoning is a stagnant zoning. You can build this way and this way. That's it. And if you take a look at it, that gives you, on TOD, is a great example of you've reduced your setbacks, you've increased your density, and you've reduced your parking. This village is suffering from development that is not controlled. What we need is a progressive and incentive zoning. What we need is to prevent things such as making a wall of buildings that are 4 stories high along the Boston Post Road where we see our harbor. We have a great view of a graduated approach in this village on heights throughout the village. What we don't need is the tall buildings that block all our views and do away with our scenic vistas. This is what we really need to do, and this is what, as mayor and as Thomas Burt as trustee, are seeking to do.
Thank you. Mr. Rosenblum.
Yes, I hear Dan quite clearly in plain English. What I don't hear, and I suggest, is perhaps speaking another language, which I call the truth. The fact of the matter is, on the Post Road, the Village of Mamaroneck entire board, 5-0, passed an overlay where you can't build high rises and 40-foot buildings. There is no room on Mamaroneck Avenue to do that. As far as the TOD is concerned, this is another example of the Village of Mamaroneck as a leader. The TOD is the way to go that most municipalities throughout New York State and many other states are doing. What it does is helps keep one of the greatest gifts that the village has, which is diversity. The diversity of its people, diversity economically. And the fact of the matter is that I've spoken directly with Brixmor, who owns the AMP property, as people know it. As a matter of fact, what they did in the bankruptcy, they bought that lease. Nothing's going in. There was discussions between Brixmor and Joe Germano to get that land perhaps expand under the TOD. I believe from that discussion it's not going to happen, but I can tell you from the discussions I had, it is my firm belief that there will be some sort of grocery store on that spot. And as far as other construction is concerned, the existing zoning is there. It's been passed by nonpartisan groups, and the Village of Mamaroneck is extremely successful. We've been able to keep our tax cap of 2% or under, and the development that's there shows that the Village of Mamaroneck is very successful and there are no empty stores like other communities.
Thank you. The closing of the AMP will create a food desert in the village. How do you propose to attract a grocery store to the Village of Mamaroneck to take the place of the AMP? Mr. Rosenblum.
A good question. I'll just repeat what I said. Brixmor is a company that owns that property. They are interested in having a grocery type store there. That is their specialty. They are not builders. I believe that from was told to me, I'll repeat again, there will be some type of grocery store there. They are looking at different opportunities. Different grocery stores have approached them to go in, national chains that they know of. And anyone who goes in there will be in there probably for 10 to 20 years on a lease. And again, it's just a type of situation where you deal with what's there, deal with the people that are there. And in the interim, by the way, when the A&P is closed, and they may even be closed now, or about to close, I had requested the village manager, Rich Schlingerland, to talk to Steve Altieri and Nancy Seligson to discuss the possibility, along with even perhaps Brixmore kicking in or some other people, to have some type of local transportation for seniors and so on between the A&P site and Stop and Shop in the interim. That's what's called planning ahead of time and taking care of your seniors and people that don't have the economic wherewithal to perhaps drive. It's just called planning ahead of time.
Thank you. Mr. Natchez.
Well, Norman, I'm glad you're clairvoyant, because you were clairvoyant when we lost the movie theater, and your quote was, "I was deceived." The fact is, you don't know what's going to happen. But our zoning only gives a bonus for a grocery store if you have 25,000 square feet. A supermarket requires 40, 50,000 square feet or more. Our zoning does not encourage a supermarket. You may have a small little grocery store, but it adversely affects. The whole point of TOD was people should do away with cars and be able to move or walk to your supermarket. That's not going to happen the way we're going. But I'd like to go back to, Norman, you need to have your facts straight. What was just or is being approved or being applied for on Delancey Avenue and the Boston Post Road is 40 feet above the Post Road. It's a 38-foot tall building. Our zoning requires no more than 3 stories, but by a quirk in getting around technicalities, they have a 4-story building. That's not what you want to look at in terms of your harbor. What you're going to have is a wall of canyons, and it deteriorates dramatically from our feel of the entire scenic vista approach to life. So please get your facts straight.
Thank you. Is Stuart Tykert in the audience? Great. This question is from Stuart, and the question is directed to both candidates. Or were you directing it to the mayor? I couldn't, both, okay. Silt removal from rivers is an important part of flood mitigation. In the past, it has been done on a catch-as-can basis. As mayor, will you support establishing a budget line devoted to silt removal? And we're going to start with Mr. Natchez.
The simple word is yes. This village has dredged twice in terms of silt removal, but we don't do it right. What we do is we dig in, we lift out the silt, and we put it up on the side. And so when you have a major flood, the velocity of the water takes the silt and puts it right back in instead of moving it away. There were comments by others that, well, you'll put rocks, and I think Lou Santoro said, well, the last debate, well, they'll put rocks or something else on top of it. That's not what is done. The problem is that we started the program in 2009, 2010. It was last dredged in 2012. They've dredged twice in 6 years. They've taken the money and put it for other things, so they say. The fact is that we have tremendous silt buildup in terms of entire rivers, and that helps create constrictions, which creates more flooding. We need to do more, and we need to be much more proactive on how we manage our flooding and how we manage the silt removal.
Thank you. Mr. Rosenblum.
Yes, actually I will take credit along with Lou Santoro and the other 3 members of the board to show that there is bipartisan workings in the Village of Mamaroneck for the flood mitigation. We started the silt removal, and not supposed to call it dredging, but it's exactly what it is with soil banking. The fact is that we located 3 major areas, one by 95 off Grove Street, right by the EMS building by Barry Avenue and by 95 on Fenimore Road. On the Barry Avenue alone, we took out 6 feet of silt, bank cast it, and it's not going to wash away because then you put and I was there, I watched it, you put a cover over it and then you seed it to keep it there. The only reason that it wasn't done every year, and as a matter of fact, it is budgeted. We took the money because when the engineers went out to look at it, some was not needed for the silt removal, but what was needed was to mediate and mitigate flood mitigation by cleaning the catch basins, which is exactly what we did. In 2015, we are ready to go. We have the money. We are waiting because a new wrinkle is that we need permits from the Army Corps of Engineers. We are waiting for that permit, and I expect it to be fully done again this year, probably within the next, by mid-December. That's what we've been told so far.
Thank you. What changes, if any, would you make to the village's parking meters and regulations, and why? Mr. Rosenblum.
Oh, actually, this is a great favorite subject of mine. I've been talking about parking in the Village of Mamaroneck for many years. Based on federal studies, the Village of Mamaroneck has approximately 400 spaces in downtown Mamaroneck. According to the federal studies, a village the size of 20,000, which is basically the Village of Mamaroneck, probably should have between 1,100 and 1,400 spaces. Will that happen? I have no idea. But there are 2 pieces of property owned by the Village of Mamaroneck. One is the CVS, and one is in back of Payless Shoes. That is an area you can look to improve, whether it be tier parking or some other kind of structure. As far as the immediate concern in the Village of Mamaroneck, there are 2 philosophies, one multi-space meters and one individual space meters. To have multi-space meters is ridiculous. We had the manufacturer come here. He has told you and told the village that the only place you have multi-space meters is in Europe. And that's the only reason I continue to manufacture them. The Walker study, which the village paid for, suggested that we have multi-space meters. They also did the same to a town in Massachusetts, and after 1 year and $1 million, they took the multi-space meters out and they put the individual space meters in. You have an individual space meter, you can do the same thing. Credit card payment, you can even call up. That's the only way to go.
Thank you. Mr. Natchez.
The issue of parking is that there are people who abuse it. There are people who stay on the avenue longer than is reasonable. The question of what to do in terms of building structures, you've had consultant reports that we've spent thousands and thousands of dollars on that have said the tier parking doesn't work for the 2 lots that Norman has talked about. You've created a citizens committee to try and come up with a holistic approach to what to do. Their report is not totally in, but the preliminary discussions were that on the avenue they want individual meters, updated so that you can use credit cards and whatever, similar to what New Rochelle does, and put the multi-space meters in the group parking areas, such as the Spencer lot, such as the CVS lot, such as the Hunter tier lot. But I'd like to go back to the issue of when you say that, thank you, you know, when you say that, you know, you need more spaces, all the studies have shown that we have plenty of parking, it's just not used. A lot of people don't know about the sites on either side of the avenue, and you have Harbor Island and the railroad station that are empty. It's a matter of trying to let people know where they are and economically make the incentive to use them.
Thank you. For several years, the village has had a 2-term limit for citizen volunteers serving on the village's many land use boards and committees. In your opinion, what has been the impact of term limit, and should it be continued? Mr. Natchez.
The term limit is a good thing, probably should apply to the elected officials as well, because what it does is it brings new blood and new ideas in. It doesn't mean that somebody who has served for the 2 terms can't continue to serve in another capacity, but it does mean that we give more opportunities to bring in people with good ideas and to try and help grow the village in a meaningful manner. So I'm very much in favor of them. And I'm very much in favor of trying to bring in people who are exceedingly knowledgeable, not on a political basis, but in terms of their background and what they can contribute. That's what our village is based upon. We have tremendous number of volunteers who are tremendously helpful and are the backbone of this village, not only just for the commissions and boards that we have, but for the volunteer committees in our fire department. And we need to keep those volunteers, and we need to make it enjoyable for them to be there, and we need to encourage their participation, and we need to listen to them rather than doing things and then talking to them afterwards.
Thank you. Mr. Rosenblum.
I am definitely in favor of keeping the two-term limit specifically for the land use boards. Those terms are 5 years each. After 10 years, I think it's reasonable for other people to come in for obvious reasons. However, I think it could be a potential review on the other boards and commissions, whatever they are, that are only 2-year terms, and after 2 terms of that, you can't go on again. Again, nonpartisan board has allowed existing committees to be expanded from 5 to 7, in some cases to 9. Why don't you just open up the term limits and have them there? Also, you have to look at, when you study something like this, are the people available? There are times when you have committees and you don't have a quorum because you don't have enough people there. It is something that can certainly be looked at. But as far as the land use boards, I will reiterate that, in fact, it should continue with the 2 limit of 5-year terms. And regarding the volunteer fire department or any other group, that is the key to the success of the village of Mamaroneck, which is, continuously going around, and based on the fact that is it affordable to live here. The volunteer fire department saves this village between $3 and $4 million a year compared to paid fire departments in similar municipalities like Harrison, Port Chester, Rybrook. Even the town of Mamaroneck with its paid firemen is very expensive. Village of Mamaroneck is B-rated, one of the best volunteer, if not the best volunteer department in New York State.
Thank you. What do you believe the village should do with the former firehouse property? Mr. Rosenblum.
Oh, that's terrific. I love that. Just look in the back, and you can look at the sign LMC-TV. That's what I want to go into the firehouse. There's been continuous discussion for the past several years. While it was noted by some individuals on a previous board cannot bind any future board. I think the fact that there are limited people here, but it doesn't matter that much because people can watch this on LMC-TV on a repeat, or they're home watching it live now, changing channels between the Mets. But the fact of the matter is there are less and less coverage of local politics, local school events, and so on. It is imperative that we maintain LMC-TV. And as the chair of the Board of Control of Larchmont Mamaroneck Cable Television, we were just notified today that Cablevision was purchased by a major company. It is time probably to renegotiate and get even a better deal and make sure that it continues for the next 20 or 30 years.
Thank you. Mr. Natchez.
There's no question that LMC-TV has to have a home and has to be preserved, and has to have a home that is meaningful, that is logistically works for them, and has proper space. I can't tell you whether the firehouse meets those criteria or not, because I don't have access to all the plans and what their needs are. I know that there are competing offers for a home, but it needs to be in a central location, and it needs to be meaningful and productive. But I'd like to go to something else. We also need to be very proactive in terms of what our budgets are. And one of the big issues that we have is we pay our attorneys hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars. And it's projected for this year, it'll be over $600,000. That's because we really don't have a village attorney that is full-time, that is in control of what we are doing and helps stop all of the cost overruns and make sure the contracts are correct. So I think we need to re-examine that and put that back into a real perspective.
Thank you. Is Andres Bermudez Hallstrom? Okay, this question is directed to Mr. Natchez. and you will have time to respond if you'd like. Why are you against building at 3 Jalapenos in the TOD zone that only one person has opposed at the land use boards, but are in favor of building 2 mansions on Flagler Drive despite land use board opposition from a half-dozen neighbors and the neighborhood association? Mr.
Would you
Natchez.
repeat the question one more time? Because I'm not sure I got the beginning.
Why are you against building at 3 Jalapenos in the TOD zone that only one person has opposed at the land use boards, but are in favor of building 2 mansions on Flagler Drive despite land use board opposition from a half-dozen neighbors and the neighborhood association?
Well, Andres, you need to get your facts straight. First of all, I have never said anything publicly about 3 Jalapenos one way or the other. So when you say I'm against it, then you've made an assumption. I believe TOD, it stands for totally overdeveloped. And I've already discussed that at length. What we have, if you build it out, you have hundreds and hundreds of units that will line in square boxes up and down Mamaroneck Avenue. That's not what this village needs. When you say we're going to put in mega mansions in Flagler Drive, again, you don't have any of your facts straight. You have 3 building lots on Flagler Drive. They are held in separate names, and the individuals have a right to apply, which they for houses. They have put in an application for 1 lot with a house that complies with the zoning and is similar to in size of the surrounding homes. That's different than building a 4-story building, you know, that you can move right next to the curbs, you know, and with only a 5-foot setback on Mamaroneck Avenue, and not have enough parking, because TOD only works when you really have sufficient transportation in all directions as opposed to just north, south, east, west.
Thank you. Would you like to?
Absolutely. What I'm hearing is a lot of fluff and puff. The fact of the matter is that TOD is transit-oriented development. It's an award-winning program that the Village of Mamaroneck was awarded by the Westchester County Planning Association. It is a type of program that I noted before is something that most communities are looking to do. For the environment, it's good. It attracts younger people coming in here. But let's get back to your other situation you were talking about. And this is a clear an example of, I believe, the difference between Dan and myself. Dan's been fighting by himself and also with SAPOA for many years to stop development by the Mamaroneck Beach and Yacht Club, which is certainly their right, and I would support anybody's right to do that. But yet, you're protecting your own rights. How about protecting the same rights of the people that live on Flagler Drive? The fact of the matter is, when it came up, and I did ask the people on Flagler Drive, Edgewater Point Association is desperately against it. The developer needs permission from the Edgewater Point Association to do it, and the fact of the matter is, there aren't 3 building lots. One is non-conforming, and they don't have to do it. So let's get the facts straight. The fact is that when I deal with something like that, whether it be TOD or anything else, a question of zoning, and that's the only thing a Board of Legislation can do, which is the Board of Trustees, is treat everyone fairly, no matter where you are in the Village of Mamaroneck. I don't care if it's a Mamaroneck Beach and Yacht Club, Hampshire Country Club, Orienta, or Washingtonville. You treat everybody the same.
Thank you. Is Brian Kerr in? This question is for both candidates. How do you plan to revise the village traffic code? Mr. Rosenblum.
Well, I don't know if I quite understand the question. The traffic code, it comes under New York State V&T. If you're talking about how do you change traffic patterns and stuff like that, that can be done by changing streets, 1 way, 2 ways, restricting parking. As a matter of fact, very proud, again, nonpartisan politics is always the best and the most helpful. For years, we have been working with Assemblyman Otis and George Latimer even when George was the assemblyman, to do and accomplish something that is in response to complaints by the people that live near the railroad station. And we've been able finally to accomplish through only an act of state legislature to do what Larchmont was able to do several years ago. We now will be looking at restricting residential parking only in the Washingtonville area and by Union and Melbourne. This is a direct response to the people's wishes, and another basic philosophy and principle I have: we own our allegiance not to people from the outside, but people that live in residence in the village of Mamaroneck, and that's exactly what I will continue to do as mayor.
Thank you. Mr. Natchez.
Would you repeat the question, because I'm not sure I understood exactly what the question was.
How do you plan to revise the village traffic code?
Revise, that's the word I didn't hear, okay. One of the big issues that we do have in this village is traffic. All you have to do is try and go from one end of the village to the other during the day. You used to be able to go in a few minutes, and now it takes up to a half an hour at a time, sometimes longer. Doing a traffic code revision, I'm not sure the code needs to be revised as much as we need to have a traffic plan that better understands what our patterns are in a way that preserves our neighborhoods, not like Washingtonville, where everything is directed through them, so that they can't have a reasonable approach to enjoy their quality of life as a neighborhood, which is important to do. That bothers me. So that's what I think where we need to go on the traffic. But more importantly, Norm, you say that we want to treat everybody friendly and fairly. Then why are you such a bully at meetings against some of your own trustees that are sitting there? Why do you continually badger them, and why do you continue to badger people who come up and don't happen to the podium to talk and you don't agree with them? That's not being very friendly, and it's not being very fair.
Thank you. The question and answer period is closed. We will now go to closing statements. Mr. Natchez, you have 1.5 minutes.
The one thing that Norm and I agree on is that this election gives the electorate a clear choice. We believe in reasonable development and long-range strategic planning, fiscal responsibility and accountability, and listening to all and providing answers to those with questions and concerns as opposed to just saying thank you. Together we can maintain our neighborhoods, our harbors, and the quality of life that we love and the reason we live here. Our neighbors and volunteers are the backbone of our community. 30 years ago, we put friendly back into the village. Now we need to do it again. As elected officials, we need to set an example and obey all of our laws, not just the ones that we happen to like and disobey the ones we just happen not to agree with. How many times have, we say, how could they let this happen? How could we let the movie theater close? How can we let A&P disappear? We need to remain a village, not a city. We don't need to be New Rochelle. We don't need to be the Bronx, and what we need to be is the friendly village. When Thomas Burden is elected as trustee, and I am elected as mayor, with all of your help, we will put this village back on track. And we thank you, and we urge you all to go to vote on November 3, regardless from whom you're going to vote for, although we think there's a clear choice of who's the best candidates, which is Natchez Burt. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Rosenblum.
Yes, thank you very much again, everyone who participated. I love being mayor of the village of Mamaroneck. I love working with Lou Santoro. Both of us are lifelong residents. We have not only perspective, but we have a history of working with the village of Mamaroneck, and quite honestly, majority of the time on a nonpartisan basis. I also note that the successes in the village of Mamaroneck are based on, in my estimation, our ability to facilitate and encourage volunteers in the village of Mamaroneck. And I can point specifically to the Marine Education Center that came about, the block parties on the village of Mamaroneck, the increased interest in participation in the village of Mamaroneck, Mamaroneck, also giving our volunteer fire department the equipment they need and so on. But I find, and there is a distinct difference, is when you, and this is the first campaign I've been involved in this, where it's just complete distortion of the facts and outright lies. The only development on the Post Road was from a court, and that is the old McGuire site, and that's limited. All other development in the Village of Mamaroneck is regulated by zone. It's 40 feet. You're not going to see canyons in there. The project before the Planning Board now for 3 jalapenos has been received, well received by the Planning Board, is a fantastic example of what needs to be done in the Village of Mamaroneck to help maintain your tax base and allow us to keep under 2% tax cap, and most important, maintain the quality of life and the character as a Village of Mamaroneck, the name #1 as a village, not a town or anything else.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Natchez and Mr. Rosenblum, for attending this evening.
Thank you very much for hosting, and thank you very much for chairing.
I'd like to call up the candidates for the Village of Mamaroneck trustee.
Thank you. We've just got the one camera. We've just got one camera.
Hi, Susie Rush. Nice to meet you.
Thank you for doing this.
We now begin our final session with the Village of Mamaroneck trustee candidates. I'd like to introduce the candidates: Thomas H. Burt, to my left, and Louis N. Santoro, incumbent, to my right. To review the rules, each candidate has up to 1.5 minutes for an opening statement. The order of speaking was determined by lot prior to the start of the forum. We will then have approximately 25 minutes for Q&A. The first few questions will be from the League of Women Voters. Thereafter, I will ask questions submitted from the audience, provided the submitter is present at the time. Each candidate will have 1.5 minutes to respond. There will be no rebuttal. After Q&A, each candidate will have up to 1.5 minutes to make a closing statement. Our timekeeper will hold up a sign to indicate 30 seconds remain and a sign when time is up. Mr. Santoro, please identify your party affiliations, if any. Then you have up to 1.5 minutes to make your opening statement.
Thank you. Republican Party, Reform Party, Conservative Party, and the Village Party. Thank you.
And now,
my statement? Okay.
Yes.
Being a long lifetime resident of the Village of Mamaroneck, I ran for office in 2009, and I was elected. During mine and Norman's current 3 terms, we both worked very hard. Mamaroneck is a great place to live. I feel proud of the things that have been accomplished by everybody on the board and all the village employees. This is something everybody should be proud of, because I'm proud to say I'm a trustee in the Village of Mamaroneck. The residents of the Village of Mamaroneck need to elect members to the Board of Trustees who will work for them. We are ready to continue to work, tackle the tough issues of the village, present new ideas, and keep Mamaroneck in the direction it's going. I'm asking the residents for the Village of Mamaroneck for the opportunity to continue for 2 more years to help keep spending down, making the tough and right decisions. Together we can do it, but we need the support of all the residents.
Thank you. Mr. Burt, please state your party affiliations, if any, and then make your 1.5 minute opening statement.
Democratic Party and Mamaroneck first. My neighbors, my friends, we chose this village for many reasons: our schools, our neighborhoods, our harbor and its natural beauty. And if we want to keep these things, we must plan to keep them. My daughter's teachers at MAS sometimes say that she's more like her older brother than her twin. They know my kids that well, and many of yours too, and I'm not giving that up without a fight. Our schools are our most fragile infrastructure. And the rule of infrastructure is that if you force it, it breaks. Too many cars will break our roads and bridges. Too many flushes will break our pipes and then our rivers. And too many kids will break our schools. I don't want that to happen as a parent and as a citizen. And I don't want that to happen as a taxpayer. We can't afford to build out MAS to accommodate blocks of apartments in TOD, and Central to accommodate 105 houses at Hampshire, and to deal with whatever replaces Holy Trinity and Rye Neck, and to dig up the pipes, and to fix the bridges, and to elevate the houses. The faster we grow, the more of this we have to do all at once. And the less we may like the place that we live when it's done. We live close enough that your traffic is my traffic, your roads are my roads, your river is my river, your backyard is my backyard. So let's plan to protect each other like we're neighbors, because we are.
Thank you. We will now begin our question and answer period. The first question, which has been submitted by the League, is, what is your view of the scale of development being proposed in the village? Mr. Burt.
Worrisome. I think there was a question in the last debate about, do you have a problem with 3 Jalapenos building? And no, I don't. There are a lot of things proposed that I don't particularly have a problem with in isolation, and that cumulatively concern me. We have right now about 110 units that are planned and that are approved and not built, and we have about 160 before the planning boards, including 105 at Hampshire. And then we have the administration's estimate at TOD, which is somewhere between 300 and 400, 350 and 400 if it's completely built out, but that's 58% of the land area, which means that if you multiply it to every possible lot, it's over 600, and then you have maybe 200 more that could be done as infill housing in the area around Halstead and Ward. Nobody's proposed it yet, but it could happen. And pretty soon you're up to 1,000 units. And we can't accommodate that kind of development. We have to zone for what could happen instead of zone for what a developer tells us they're going to do, because we can't rely on those promises. Thinking ahead is not asking people what they're going to do over the course of the next few years. Thinking ahead is planning years and years in advance. Otherwise, we find ourselves in a place we don't recognize.
Thank you. Mr. Santoro.
The scale of proposed development directly corresponds with the financial health of our village. And that's a good thing. It means the village is a place to be and people want to build and live here. And it's also important to note the proposed development should include substantial material and construction itself that has lower environmental impact of the surrounding communities. Also make it known that the Village of Mamaroneck Land Use Boards review all applications that come before the Board of Trustees.
Thank you. What do you consider the village's biggest infrastructure challenge, and how do you propose addressing it? Mr. Santoro.
Good question. The biggest challenge right now is the infrastructure and how it's outdated. And we've been doing the catch basin program. I believe we just cleaned a number of catch basins, and we're doing the sewer lateral program with Arcadis right now, where we're locating leaks that are going into the sanitary. And it's important that we stay on top of this, we follow it through, and that we have money each year to keep these programs going.
Thank you. Burt.
Space constraints of our schools and their ability to keep up with development, residential development, number one, because the more we have to build out, the more we are effectively subsidizing development. We have to pay the cost, and we are not recapturing it. So the more residential units we build, the behinder we get. The same is essentially true for our sewer infrastructure. The more residential units we build, the more we have to upgrade our aging sewer infrastructure and deal with the problems that arise. If we want to do that all at once, we should build residential units really, really fast, and then we will have to pay for it all at once. I would rather stage that over time, because while it's less important and less easy to talk about than our schools, it also is going to have huge cost impacts that we can either stage over time or we can handle in a rudderless way and end up paying for all at once.
Thank you. Please comment on the amount of debt carried by the village. Do you believe this is an appropriate level of debt, taking into consideration the size of our annual budget? Why or why not? Mr. Burt.
I think that the overall number is not troubling. I think that the trend is worrisome. Much like development, it's not that we're in trouble now. It's that if we keep going the way we are headed towards a reef. We are up from essentially around the size of our 100% of our annual budget not too long ago. 6 years later, we're up to 45 million, and that's 50% over, a little less than that. But it's a significant growth. It's a growth of $6 million over just the last 6 years. It's $1 million a year. If we keep spiraling at this rate, we are going to get into a place where we're in trouble. So right now, we're still financially healthy. We should be keeping it that way. And I think that it is unwise to continue on a course where we engage in a false economy of letting debt substitute for fiscal prudence.
Thank you. Mr. Santoro.
As the mayor said, our debt right now is about $33 million plus about another 7.6 for a total of $40 million. Our annual budget is 33, but we're still a AA rating from Moody's, who comes in every year and does the ratings for the budget and everything like that. Our recommended ratio is about 20%. We're anywhere from 23 to 25 now in our fund balance. And every year we get audited through a company, outside company comes and audits our books, and they said that we're very strong financially, and a lot of communities in Westchester would like to be like the Village of Mamaroneck is with that 23 to 25%.
Thank you. What progress has been made to mitigate flooding, and what more do you think should be done? Mr. Santoro.
We've done some silt removal, and we've done some catch basins. We've done some sewer lateral programs that have been done in the Village of Mamaroneck. Our engineers are working on the infrastructure to pinpoint locations of things that have to be done. We've worked the last couple of years with the town of Mamaroneck. When we have some storms that are coming, we work with Steve Altieri's office with the reservoir of lowering the reservoir a week before, or 10 days before, if we know that, and it prevents some flooding. And then what they do is, with the reservoirs being low, that holds retention for water, and then after the rain is stopped like that, they release the water a little time, so it prevents any flooding in the low-lying areas of Washingtonville.
Thank you. Mr. Burt.
So I think one of the things that both sides agree on in this race is that one of the best things that we can do on our own without waiting for outsiders to help us is silt removal. However, I have to say, I think it is a program that we need to pay more attention to, be more regular about, and I think both sides in this race have gone to the Campaign Fair Practices Board. I haven't been able to talk about it till now, and it's just public today. Saying that the other side has said something that's not correct or out of context or unfair, and both sides have been held to be unfair or out of context, but only one comment by either side was held to be flat untrue, and that was earlier in this race when the mayor and Lou Santoro were saying that they had dredged every year, or leaving the impression that their dredging program had been completed every year. It should be, it needs to be, because flooding is an every year problem here. We don't flood every year, but we need to worry about it every year. We need to think about it all the time. We can never let that lapse. That is not something we can take our hand off the tiller on. And so I think now they've trimmed their sails and their rhetoric is back to, we should pay attention to it all the time, which is correct, but we need to pay attention to it and actually do it every year.
Thank you. What is your view of the role of the village government in preserving our historic buildings? Mr. Burt.
I don't like to wing answers to things that I haven't thought about. I think we love the history of this place. I was walking in Washingtonville the other day by the Skinny House, and the history of that neighborhood and the various demographics that have moved through it, and the pieces of our history that remain to us as physical objects. I love architecture, and I love the idea that Mamaroneck is a living text of history, but I don't have a view yet about the proper role of the village in preserving it, and I don't like to say what I'm going to do as a matter of policy when I haven't thought about it. We've been focused on other things in this race. We've been focused on our infrastructure, our development, and our direction, and our fiscal prudence. I guess I will turn my attention to that when I'm able.
Thank you. Mr. Santoro.
Village of Mamaroneck has continued growing, and it changed over the past couple of years. We lost the movie theater, and we lost Holy Trinity Church, which combined with St. Vito's. But one thing I can say is the board passed, I think it was a 4-1 vote or a 5-0 vote, that in 2014, that if anybody is going to do a demolition, a property owner must file plans with the building department for where reconstruction is going to be done before any demolition permit's going to be. So I think it's slowed down a lot of the things in the village have been going on as far as not having, like, if the movie theater got knocked down, we'd have a big open hole on Mamaroneck Avenue, or we had many years ago when we had the major fire on Mamaroneck Avenue. It was years and years and years. So I think we address that problem by, not having any eyesores or open things. And also, I'd like to have maybe the BAR get involved with these historical things and the beautification committee in the village to keep everything nice and proper.
Thank you. What should be the village's strategy to manage our growing deer population and the occasional presence of coyotes in our vicinity? Mr. Santoro.
Just recently, the board instituted a committee of volunteers from the area for work on deer management and the coyotes. We're trying to work with the surrounding communities, especially with Rye and then with the county, who said now that they're not going to allow hunting out on the John Jay property. So it's a problem that our volunteers committee are going to come back with a recommendation, hopefully to the board, and we can move in the right direction, do it as civil and not a gruesome matter of way of getting rid of these deers and coyotes.
Thank you, Mr. Burt.
We need an aggressive and humane solution. We have to work with the county because the deer don't respect municipal boundaries. We do have deer living within the village, so we can't entirely rely on the county to do it. However, this is one of those things where we have to weigh the strong feelings of a lot of our residents. There are a few alternatives that people propose as cost-effective, and they include having professional hunters do a cull. I don't like the idea of doing that within the village boundaries because it brings, because under special permit it brings professionals in, but it puts rifles into fairly populated areas. Our village is simply too small for me to be in favor of that. Doing bow hunter programs, a lot of people feel it's not as effective as sometimes said to be. Sterilization programs are worth a strong look because there's a lot of controversy over how successful they can be, and I think we need to take that seriously because it might just work.
Thank you. What do you believe the village should do with the former firehouse property? Mr. Burt.
What we said we were originally going to do with it, and I know the mayor in a debate earlier today said that a past board can't bind a future board, but what we said we were going to do is reduce our debt by selling it, and we just haven't done it. We just haven't done it because of a lack of political will or because people had another idea for what to do with that property. I think we need to be fiscally minded about it. I understand that LMC-TV very much wants that property. It's worth thinking about, but I also don't dismiss out of hand that we should reverse this trend of growing debt. So I don't have a firm answer for you because there are competing needs for that, but I don't want to walk away from the idea that what we originally said for fiscal prudence reasons we're going to do.
Thank you. Mr. Santoro.
Right now, the Village of Mamaroneck is in negotiation with LMC-TV for a possible, they want to consolidate and move to one central location. These talks have been going on quite frequently in the last couple months, and it's guaranteed, it's not guaranteed, but the board is all together on this actually for this proposal. I think if it doesn't work out, the thing I would like to do is, we have a problem with Volunteers Firehouse being in the flood zone. So we can relocate Volunteers Fire Department to the Hook and Ladder building, and then we can sell the property, pay off some debt that's down in Washingtonville at the firehouse. Actually, we had an appraisal done on both properties, and the property of Volunteer Firehouse came out as a higher, more feasible place to sell than the Hook and Ladder building.
Thank you. Our local food pantry serves people every other week, and St. Thomas Church offers a brown bag lunch once a week. Neither of these resources offer food on a daily basis, and both have experienced an enormous strain on their resources. Please outline your outreach programs to serve the daily needs of people without the financial means to feed themselves. Mr. Santoro.
I'm a member of the Mamaroneck Elks, and we do a lot of stuff for the veterans and for the community. I would reach out to community organizations who give money to the community and to different groups to see if maybe once a month or once a week they can sponsor some type of program. Many times we have the seniors up from Kingsbridge Hospital up at the Elks, and we serve them food, and it's funded through the Elks program, so there's no reason why we can't keep that money local. There's also grants that are out there through the Elks Foundation also. If we do community events, we get reimbursed 100%. So I would move to different organizations for the Lions Club, the Kiwanis, and possibly the Chamber, or even some restaurants. There's very generous people in this community who are willing to donate food or different facilities for these kind of organizations that need help.
Thank you. Mr. Burt.
Volunteers are the backbone of this community, and if there are volunteer organizations that will undertake that role, we should do everything we can to support them, and we should have an aggressive outreach to get that moving.
Thank you. What is your experience working collaboratively with people of differing points of view? Mr. Burt.
I'm a member of the Class Action Plaintiffs Bar. All I do is deal with people with differing points of view. As a lawyer in private practice doing litigation for 17 years now, I spend much of my time dealing with people either who inherently have interests adverse to the ones I'm representing, or people who are both my colleagues and also my competitors, and we have to be able to work together. I have to be able to fight with people for roles in cases and then come together with them to actually litigate the cases against the other guys. So I think my entire private sector experience leads me to be able to work with people that I disagree with, that I say pointed things towards, that I may not even like, but that I have to be able to find some common ground with.
Thank you. Mr. Santoro.
My past experience as union rep for 4 years and union president for 15 years at the Westchester Joint Waterworks, I learned to listen, think things through out completely before reacting. The Village of Mamaroneck has a lot changed lately, and we've had a lot of contract negotiations in the last 6 years we've been on the board. And we really haven't been to any arbitrations or any mediation cases. And that's because we have strong people. We have men and women who basically live in the community from different backgrounds. Everybody wants to work together, and so if I'm elected, to continue to move that program forward.
Thank you. Is Angela Giraldo? Hi. This question is directed to Mr. Burt, but you will have an opportunity to respond. You say TOD is a bad idea. However, last year, the Democratic candidates campaigned on supporting TOD and got elected. Is that not enough proof that TOD is in fact a good idea and the majority of the village actually supports TOD?
I think a lot of things sound like great ideas until you get an idea where they're headed. I think if you say we should rationalize the zoning in a large area because it's patchwork and everybody needs variances to do something, I think that sounds like a good idea. So I think that started with a good intention, and it will produce probably some good buildings. I think the cumulative effect is very seriously negative on our infrastructure as a whole. So while I think it started out with the best of intentions, I think that the net effect is trending towards something that is extremely worrisome in scale and in overall impact. So I think you have to adapt to facts as they evolve, and I think as the facts of TOD have evolved, they have become worrisome.
Thank you. Mr. Santoro.
I believe the TOD is a good idea. We had many workshops with the people in the area, and once they have a better understanding what's going on, I think they're more receptive to TOD. Unlike in 2009 when the project of Blood Brothers was proposed, it was a 4-to-1 vote by the board to put 105 units in there. They've yet to be built. It's an as-built. The person who had the property lost it in foreclosure, but the person that bought it, 2 gentlemen from New York City, have the right to build 105 units. There was no outpour from the community because nobody knew about it. We're being very transparent with this TOD, reaching out to the residents, let them know what's going on, taking their feedbacks before any final decisions are done.
Thank you. Is Nora Lucas in the audience? Hi. This is from Nora, directed to Mr. Santoro. Was the appraisal of the Volunteers Firehouse made before or after TOD was passed?
It was before TOD was passed. it was before TOD was passed, I believe was in the anywhere from $750,000 to $800,000 range, and the firehouse at Hook and Ladders came in from $675,000 to $700,000.
Did you want to make any? You have the opportunity.
I think the overall, not specifically, but generally on the role of TOD and the changing in the neighborhood, we've got a plan that has just been made public to revitalize the industrial area. And we have this zoning overlay that is intended to draw a whole bunch of apartment units to the TOD area and increase its density. And we have, in between, we have Washingtonville, which already complains of parking and traffic problems. And we have to think about the overall impact on that area in terms of whether they're going to have a livable neighborhood when everything we do is done. We can't take these projects in isolation. We have to think about the overall impact of the combined whole.
Thank you. This will end the question and answer period. We will now go to closing statements. Mr. Santoro, you have 1.5 minutes.
I thank the League of Women Voters, LMC-TV, and everybody that came out tonight, and everybody that's watching. This is a good thing for the community. People get to see all the candidates and what they represent and what they can do for our village. I enjoy what I've been doing for the last 6 years. I hope that Norman and I do get reelected next Tuesday, November 3rd, and we will continue to fight the fight and do what we've been doing for the last 6 years. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Burt.
This election is about something. This election matters. This election is about direction. It's about the future. It's about stewardship. I'm asking you to elect me as your trustee, but more than that, I'm asking you to elect what I stand for. Planning our development so that it serves us instead of letting it happen to us. Staging our growth so that we don't burst at the seams and bleed dollars that we don't have. But most of all, it's about this. If you have a problem in your backyard, is it your problem or is it our problem? If I have a problem in my backyard, is it my problem or is it our problem? We will not always agree, and we may not always even get along, but we can always look out for each other. If you believe that we're all in this together, then there's one easy thing that you can do to show it. You can reach out to every voter that you know. I would love you to tell them that you are supporting Dan and me. But even if there are people that you don't want to talk politics with or don't want to say who you're supporting, please just say vote, because we are responsible for the officials that we elect.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Burt and Mr. Santoro, for attending this evening. In closing, I would like to thank the audience and candidates for attending this evening. Please remember to vote on Tuesday, November 3rd. Polls will be open from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. Thanks and good night.